Moral injury, bigger than PTSD. Whereas PTSD triggers a fight or flight reaction to external threats, moral injury creates a guilt and or shame response to internal threats. A, another different check engine light. In the previous 3 chapters, we discussed PTSD. We affirmed
it's a normal response to abnormally elevated events.
It's common. Most heroes who experience similar situations in the line of duty will be affected in some way.
It's not new. Even though it's been called different names, it's been around as long as humans and traumatic situations have.
It's a matter of health. Most of us aren't diagnosable for PTSD, but will benefit from leveling up our emotional health quotient.
We agreed that in the same way we wouldn't ignore the check engine light in our car, we don't want to ignore the warning signs of post-traumatic stress either. Pop the hood, look around, and do the work. For the next 2 chapters, let's talk about another light on the dashboard we all have, the conscience. Full disclosure, we believe moral injury is an even bigger issue with heroes than PTSD. We teach PTSD first, though, because it's difficult to understand moral injury without a grasp of the fundamentals of post-traumatic stress disorder. It's easier to understand both by comparing and contrasting them with one another. So, let's start this way. A question. Has anyone ever asked you if your conscience is bothering you? Perhaps you've actually asked this of someone else. What we're really asking with the question is, have you done something wrong? Do you have a guilty conscience? Webster's dictionary defines conscience as this:
the sense or consciousness of moral goodness or blameworthiness of one's own conduct, intentions, or character, together with a feeling of obligation to do right or to be good.
Now, just as we did with post-traumatic stress disorder in Chapter 3, let's highlight a few words from this definition. Now, there are words that we're going to emphasize here. I've circled them in the graphic in the book. If you're watching, they'll be on the screen, but you'll be able to catch it if you're just listening. We'll walk through a few core issues. First,
consciousness.
We're each aware of what's happening inside us on some level. We have a sense of guilt or shame that can either shackle us in some way or affirm that we're free. 2,
conduct, intentions, or character.
Conduct is what we do. Intentions refer to what we desire to do, and character is created from a string of conduct and intentions over time. This really refers to the person we are. It's who people think about, who we think about when we think about us. 3,
obligation to do right.
We each have a drive to want to do the right thing. Now, sometimes following through is another matter altogether. Some people think of the conscience as a voice or moral compass inside us, helping us distinguish right from wrong. Others believe it springs forth from our inner being, from our soul or our spirit, giving it more of a religious or spiritual connection. You may have even seen the conscience depicted as an angel and a devil, with one sitting on one shoulder of the person whispering in their ear and the other sitting on the other. The angel tells her to do right, do the correct thing. The devil says to do wrong. But as we'll see in a moment, the lines aren't as clean and clear as we grew up when we saw this on Saturday morning cartoons like decades ago. The lines aren't as clean as we thought they might be. Here's how our conscience usually affects us. Your conscience can bother you if you do something wrong. If you know how to do right, but you do the opposite, the result might be a guilty conscience. Your conscience can also bother you if you fail to do something good. A well-known Bible verse from James, of all people, again, reminds us that to the one who knows to do good and doesn't, it is to them sin. It's in James 4:17. In other words, a guilty conscience commonly results from the bad things we commit as well as the goods we omit. You might could even think about it like that. Bads we commit, goods we omit. Bads we commit, goods we omit. But that doesn't quite capture the full extent of it. The conscience is far more complex than just do the right thing and avoid doing the wrong thing. Don't commit a bad, don't omit a good. It's way more complex than that. For instance, think about these scenarios.
If you do what is right, the result should be a clear conscience.
But sometimes we do the right thing and there's a bad outcome, such as when military officers order a training exercise and someone dies.
If you don't do something wrong, the result should be a clear conscience.
But sometimes people don't do anything wrong and they still feel tainted, such as when they survive an event and someone else does not, or when they are the victim of someone else's actions, such as rape or abuse. And so survivor's guilt and all of these other elements can come into play.
If you do something you normally wouldn't do, an action that's technically wrong but is part of a greater good and saves lives, the result should be a clear conscience.
After all, you did a good thing. You saved people. But sometimes you must do things like take the life of a perpetrator in order to save a life, such as when police officers and warriors are required to fire their weapon.
If you do your best to help a person but are unsuccessful, the result should be a clear conscience.
After all, you gave it your best shot. They would not have had any hope at all if you had not sprung into action. But sometimes even the most heroic deeds, such as when a first responder runs into a burning building while everyone else rushes out, fall short, and they feel guilty because they wonder what would have happened if they turned a different direction, got there sooner, or moved a bit faster. You see, if you put a gag on your internal voice of do right, your conscience, you will often experience a sense of guilt. But sometimes feelings of guilt come anyway, oftentimes as a misplaced guilt, as the, quote, wrong that was committed is not your fault or wasn't technically a wrong at all. As well, no matter how much you logically rationalize the situation, and regardless of how persistent the spouse, the partner, or friends are at explaining it all away, and despite all of the mental gymnastics and even praying, sometimes it doesn't go away. The pain remains. You still feel what you feel. You still believe what you believe. I was speaking with a friend about PTSD and moral injury. You've heard from him earlier if you've listened to the earlier chapters. And while we were talking, he looked to his wife, who is a paramedic, and he said to her, hey, would you like to share that story? Now he's a firefighter. He was explaining one of his traumatic scenarios to me, and she jumped on and told me about some event that impacted her where she was ordered to stand down. They showed up to do the right thing, and it still led to questions of the conscience. Here is Rachel in her words.
And I remember it was toned out that morning. And there was a domestic that happened, and the woman was not married to the man that she had a baby with. So what had happened was they got in a domestic. He wanted the baby, but she didn't want to give him the baby. They got in an argument. A gun got pulled out. She was standing behind the door in an argument, and I guess the gun misfired, or he fired at it because he was gone by the time we had gotten to the mom and the baby. So we didn't really get the full story there. The bullet went through the door and it shot her. Yeah, I thought that was insane. And then it had went through her, and then there was another shot, moved her to the other side, and another shot came off, and it had hit the baby. Anyways, I remember we had to stage for the scene, and we waited like 20-30 minutes to make sure that he wasn't there, and we had to wait on Jefferson County Police Department, which they cover a vast area. So I was kind of nervous of what the baby's state was going to be like when I got there. I was nervous about the mom's state because on the dispatch, they kept saying mom was going in and out of consciousness. They were saying baby was really quiet, which when you're a paramedic, that's something you don't want to hear when you run on children. You want to know if you hear screaming lungs, they're okay. They teach you that in paramedic school. So I had an EMT in advance taking care of mom and cleaning up her dressing, getting an IV. I went over there and started medication. Then we went back to the baby. The baby was lethargic. We had to run a full code on her. And this was the first time I had ever ran a pediatric cardiac arrest. So I was very, very nervous because there's a lot of factors that go into it. Because you have to know their weight, but mom was in and out of consciousness. There was no other family member there to tell us the baby's weight, tell us the baby's real age. So we had to guesstimate everything. And then I transported mom, and then the baby was transported to Children's.
And what she's telling us is that when the paramedics arrive on the scene, they have stand down orders when it's a domestic until a law enforcement officer arrives and makes sure the scene is clear. And so when she's staging, they're setting up everything they need to go in, but they are on stand down orders until they get the all clear go ahead.
We had to pull over the street, like off of the street of where the incident had happened. And we had to wait for an officer to basically come up, secure the scene, make sure that the baby daddy was gone. As scene was de-escalated, there was no weapons. And I have to wait for the police officer to tell dispatch, to tell us that it's good for us to pull up. So, and that's always nerve-wracking too, waiting. And I felt like there was so much more we could have done. You know, I thought about, you know, why did we have to wait on scene for 20-30 minutes? Like, if we could have got there, we could have done so much more for that baby. I mean, it felt like we were hopeless. I mean, because at that point, you know, the baby didn't have a pulse, but we were still running cardiac. We were still doing our arrest and our procedures that we have to do. The Children's Hospital wanted us to bring her in because they have to call it when it becomes a child. We can't really call it unless there's like trauma, which yes, there was trauma, but she was so little.
Okay, I don't know if you caught that. What she's saying is they had to transport a dead baby. They couldn't just call it.
That they wanted us to bring her in. So, because we had had a pulse, we'd lost a pulse. So we were just going in and out. So we ended up having to bring her in, and they had called it later on that day. And I remember, if it's a serious call, TCC, which is like the trauma, who we call for like heart attack, strokes, cardiac arrest, to let hospitals know. Sometimes they'll let you know if they made it or not, if it was something super serious. I remember getting that call. We were eating lunch. I mean, we were just trying to distract ourselves from the call, but we kept bringing up in conversation what we could have done. And I remember trying to distract myself from it. We get the call, and they're like, the little girl passed away. And then they gave us like the diagnosis of everything that happened to her. So she had essentially a lot of blood loss. But it was just sad. I remember getting off work that day, and I was driving home from work to the house. I didn't realize I was driving fast. I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. I got pulled over by an Argo police officer, and he was like, did you know that you're going, 65 and a 40? And I was like, no. I said, honestly, I've had a rough 24 hours. I was like, I'm just trying to get home. I was like, there's really no excuse for it. I was like, you can, ticket me. I mean, it is what it is. So I handed my insurance and my driver's license. And I realized like I was so honed in on like what I could have done that I've completely forgot that I was driving home, the speed I was going, and then I got pulled over all at the same time. So that wasn't great. And then that call, um, ever since that call, every time we run like a pediatric call or we did after that, I would just be anxious because I felt like I failed that mom. And as being a mom now, I feel like I'd probably be even more anxious than I was.
Now, notice how personal this one was. The child she was working on, 4 to 5 months old, that was the guess. They didn't know the height, the weight, the exact age. But here is kind of the kicker.
And your baby right now is
Yeah,
how old is he?
5 months. He just turned 5 months. So literally yesterday, he's just now 5 months today. They're so little. That's the only thing I could remember really was that I'm working on a baby with my coworker and we're swapping spots. Somebody's pulling drugs. I'm doing compressions and then we would swap and he would be like, all right, well, you bag and then I'll do it. And it's the fact, the principle you're holding the baby to do the compressions. Because I'm an adult, they're on the ground. I think that really stuck with me more than anything was the fact that, I'm actually holding my patient in my hand.
B, what moral injury looks like in heroes. Here's how the conscience relates to heroes. When heroes make decisions or take actions which violate their personal values or ethics, their moral compass, their conscience, it can create a devastating impact on them and their families. The actions of the past often illuminate another check engine light that is different than PTSD. Now notice that it is different than PTSD, and we can't afford to ignore this one either. Here is Dr. Rita Brock, the professor of theology and culture at Bright Divinity, explaining a little bit about the weight and impact of the conscience. This comes from our film, Honoring the Code, which is about moral injury.
I define moral injury as the impact on a person's sense of meaning and values and their basic moral foundations when they're in situations where they have to violate their core values. That can come from something they did, something they failed to do, or something they witnessed. So there are multiple ways that moral injury can happen. It can come from losing your best friend in battle or even at a distance. You may not be deployed, but you have a friend who's deployed. It can come from handling human remains disrespectfully. And it can come from witnessing what somebody else does that you know is wrong. And you might have even felt great at the time and gotten a medal or been celebrated for work you did. So it might take years. You might be home for a long time, and those things will start to look different sometimes to people after they've been in civilian life a long time. If you start to go back through a difficult event, a traumatic thing, or a natural disaster, or car accident, or these kind of extreme conditions where you have to act, and you may not know the outcome of that act until it's over. And you may make the wrong choice, or you may fail to act to do something. That if that memory starts to haunt you, if you start to feel awful because of what you remember your role in it was, then I think you probably are struggling with moral injury issues.
Notice that Dr. Brock did not refer to this condition as PTSD. She used another term, moral injury. The condition isn't just mental or emotional like PTSD, it's different. In fact, many experts suggest moral injury is a spiritual condition. Now, Dr. Brock's years of study on the subject offer great insight to us. So, to better understand the issue, let's highlight the cause and the consequence of moral injury that she identifies. The cause and the consequence.
Cause: violating or going against one's core moral beliefs, also known as one's conscience.
Moral injury occurs when we do something that violates our internal code of humanity. This is the primary cause. We violate our conscience. The most commonly offered example is this. All soldiers and all police officers are raised being taught that murder is wrong. Yet, in the line of duty, especially for deployed warriors and law enforcement, violence is inevitable. Every hero we've met remembers the first time they fired a weapon in an adversarial situation, especially if a fatality resulted. Now notice, I'm going to play a clip here from Honoring the Code. This is a friend, J.T. Cooper, who was one of the warriors in the Black Hawk Down incident. Before that event occurred, he was asked to open fire. Now notice what he says.
The first time I was asked to fire, I asked my lieutenant 3 times. He's like, "Cooper, take that guy out." "Sir, you want me to kill this guy?" "Yes, Cooper, fire." "Sir, are you sure? I'm a 60. I got the big gun. Sir, are you sure you want me to take this guy out?" Took me 3 tries, pull the trigger. Not that I was hesitating, it's just this was broad daylight. This guy's taking pot shots at us from a crowd. And I got asked to kill him. It's not easy.
Note, moral injury might be the result of a personal choice, or it might result from a necessary action while serving, or even something ordered by someone in authority. Whatever the case, a violated conscience is, at the core, usually the cause of moral injury. Moral injury can also result from no-win situations, such as ending a perpetrator's life to save civilians. We just saw that. Though logically explainable and morally defensible, it can still leave an invisible wound. Such events often traumatize the spirit, the conscience. Now that said, let's look at what results.
Consequence: evaluating one's behavior or actions negatively to the extent that they can no longer think of themselves as a decent human being.
An overwhelming sense of guilt and shame often results from moral injury. When we act out of alignment with the things we feel make us good people, the results can be devastating. Now, notice the second point that we just looked at, the consequence. It shows the difference between PTSD and moral injury. PTSD most often occurs when a person experiences, witnesses, or encounters a traumatic event. And it can happen in multiple ways. Remember this from chapter 3. It can happen because
Experienced: it happened to me. Witnessed: it didn't happen to me, but I was there and I saw it. Encountered: I came up on it afterwards.
though PTSD, even if undiagnosed, makes us feel uneasy, the issue remains out there. We can separate ourselves from it. Moral injury, on the other hand, becomes so intertwined in the conscience that we begin questioning our decency as human beings.
Moral injury hurts the most is because we feel like we've done something wrong.
This is Misha Thomas, a petty officer. Notice what she says about the conscience and moral injury. Again, this is from the film Honoring the Code.
And we don't know how to change that because we can't change the past. So when you do the opposite of what you were taught and how you were raised, and you go against your belief system for a greater good, there are wounds that are left that aren't visible, that, you know, there's no VA percentage for. If people don't physically sometimes see something wrong with you, they just assume that nothing is.
And not only are the core causes of these invisible wounds different, but the expression of PTSD and moral injury is very different as well. Whereas PTSD creates a fight or flight response primarily. So some people attack the issue that's out there, others run away from it. Moral injury typically manifests as overwhelming feelings of guilt or shame. Whereas guilt describes the wrongness of an action. I did something wrong, therefore I am guilty of this action. Shame refers to personal identity. I am something wrong. And that's where it takes a very slippery slope that moves rapidly to questioning one's identity and even their value as a human being, because their decency is now in question. We spoke to a chaplain for a police force recently who suggested something like this.
Moral injury happens when someone hurts you and you must forgive them.
For certain, that could be an expression of it, but moral injury is most often exponentially far greater than offering someone else forgiveness for hurting you. With full-blown moral injury, you often feel you are the one who needs forgiveness, yet at the same time, the complexity is you feel certain you don't merit that absolution. Now there's a chart here. I'll put it on the screen if you're watching. In the book, I'll just refer to it. You read the far right column on the first row. That first row is talking about guilt. The second row is talking about shame. And it says guilt is based on an action, something I did. Shame is based on identity. I am something. So you read the far right column of the first row, guilt, then described in detail. So I did something, let's describe it in detail. It says something you do. It may be out of character for you, or it could have been based on circumstances. When teaching this concept at a suicide prevention workshop in Birmingham, I said something like this. None of the veterans I know go around shooting people. That's out of character for them. Firing a weapon at people is only based on a very narrow, hyper-specific set of circumstances. Same is true of law enforcement. Nonetheless, and no matter how necessary firing the weapon might be, it can still leave that internal wound that needs to be healed. Now, more examples of other scenarios are provided, and I would encourage you to read the book in the How It Happened section that follows each chapter, where there are real stories. If you don't address the wound, whatever the case, however it originated, the wound compounds the more often the specific actions, even the heroic and necessary actions, are repeated. In time, shame can be the result. Furthermore, many times what's happening inside of us, it overflows and affects how we interact with others. So unhealed hurts, they can create or they can magnify things such as marital tensions. They can propel many heroes down the road to divorce. They can amplify employer, employee, and peer-to-peer relationships, adding additional stress to already difficult jobs. They can bring tension to family and friend relationships. It's the stress inside of us that no one else knows about that causes us to yell and react in anger and other elements that people don't understand that can create a devastating impact on them. And it can be the basis of other rifts and ruptures that you could likely identify and label even now in this moment. As Dr. Brock explains, rather than moving on from our actions when we do something that creates guilt, we tend to dwell on it to the extent that we no longer see ourselves as honorable. That starts the slide to shame. This can happen to heroes, to those who nobly choose to serve others as their choice of profession. Now, you've probably heard the saying, wherever you go, there you are. When the issue is you, it's your conscience, it's your spirit, you can't fight it or run from it. You can't fight or bow up against it. It remains present at all times. In Chapter 3, we talked about perceptions and reality and how PTSD or any emotional trauma affects both our mindset and our emotions. We sometimes think one thing is happening in the present based on our past experience, so we might react inappropriately. Moral injury is different. Whereas PTSD primarily deals with our mind and our emotions, moral injury deals with our mind, what we believe, and our spirit. It's a spiritual, internal wound. C. Even if PTSD and moral injury happen at the same time, they're different. To be clear, our emotions can be involved with moral injury and our spirits can be involved with PTSD. These are each parts of our person. Anything having to do with any part of us can affect every part of us. For example, sometimes our body feels sluggish because we're depressed, or we get depressed because our body is wounded and recovering from a physical injury. There's a simple graphic in the book here that really highlights the difference between post-traumatic stress and moral injury in very generic terms. Here's what it says. PTSD, a response to something outside of you, fight or flight. Moral injury, a response to something inside of you, feelings of guilt or shame. Now, I want to look at the close overlap between PTSD and moral injury by way of a story because these two can be connected. Here's an account from Army Ranger John Reitzel. He was on a long-range recon patrol, LRP, L-R-R-P, pronounced LRP, like L-U-R-P, in Vietnam. And I want you to listen as he tells this story. It's playing from our documentary, Honoring the Code. And just think, could this instance be the cause of PTSD? Could it be the cause of moral injury? Or could it possibly cause both? Here is his story.
On a 5-man LRP team on one particular mission, in the middle of nowhere, there wasn't a village or a hamlet within 200 miles of where we were in the Western Anlo Valley in the jungle. And we came, 5 of us, and we came upon what appeared to be, it looked like something from close to my hometown in the swamp. It was thatched hooches on stilts on the side of a mountain. Inside one of the hooches, we could hear this voice, and it sounded like kind of pouting and whining. The first thing that hit my senses when I opened the door and looked at this human was leprosy, and I didn't know what to do. I think it was a he by himself. It was too hard to tell, and it was just heart-rending. Even a bunch of hardcore LRPs. So I called the company commander and I said, "Hey, I have this issue, and I need a helicopter to get this boy out of here." And he said, "Negative. We're ending the mission tomorrow. Burn the village." And And I went back and said, well, it's not really a village. It's about 8 hooches and there's no one here. And there's no food and there's water, but there's no food, there's nobody, there's no signs of anybody. And just this human that's in dire straits. And he said, I told you what to do it. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And he said, well, we'll deal with that when you get back. So about 20 minutes later, he called me and said, is there anything you can do to get that child out of that hamlet or village or whatever it was? And I said, I'm working on that. So we managed to get this body on a poncho and drag it out of the hamlet area. I called him back and said, okay, he's out. He said, burn it. So we started a fire, and then we moved to a landing zone. We left food and water. We started to a pickup zone. We got to the pickup zone, and on the helicopter on the way out, we could see the woods burning, the jungle was burning for a good long ways. And so the 5 of us on that particular mission were horrifically affected by that.
Now, living this experience would be overwhelming. In the middle of war, a group of soldiers took a young male, perhaps a teenager or small boy, and removed him from his hut. This might lead to the trauma of post-traumatic stress. But the story did not end there. After setting the young leper aside with some food, they burned the entire village, effectively leaving him homeless and without help. In doing so, they ensured his slow, protracted demise. This might lead to the trauma of moral injury. Do you see the difference? D. Heroes are trained to deal with external threats, but not as often the internal ethics that might accompany those threats. One evening, I discussed this difference between PTSD and moral injury and how they are unique yet can amplify one another at the dinner table with a few friends. We also pondered the reality that we all applaud other types of healing and advancement, except it seems emotional healing, and we tend to just push through when we face emotional hurts. Now, we talked about this earlier in chapter 2. I was sitting at the table with the state trooper, a U.S. vet from the war in Iraq, and a park ranger. The vet said this.
Having people shoot at me in Iraq was nothing. I mean, I've heard stories, and know guys who suffered from PTSD because our unit got mortared so many times. That didn't faze me. The thing that set me back the most was getting sexually abused when I was a little boy.
Then the park ranger went next.
I've had my life threatened too, but the biggest trauma I faced was when the guy who trained me was killed in the line of duty, handling what should have been a routine call. It was my day off when it happened, so I wasn't there with him. I felt guilty about it for years. Sometimes I still do. That really messed me up, even though I wasn't there to experience it. Maybe there's something I could have done if I was. I should have been there. I wonder about it a lot.
After a few moments, the park ranger repeated,
It messed me up. I should have been there to stop it, or it should have been me.
Now, I remember sitting there and I said something that was misplaced. I told him this. I said, you weren't even on call. I'm not sure why you feel survivor's guilt. It might be different if you traded shifts with him or something. I'm not saying you should feel it then, but it would be explainable. Here's what he said.
I still feel it. I hear what you're saying, but it's still there.
Now, he voiced one of those tensions that we referenced earlier, and thankfully, he very much forgave me for the misplaced comment. We saw that you can't logically explain moral injury away, no matter how illogical it might seem to someone else. You feel what you feel, and you believe what you believe. The state trooper then joined the story. He had been listening, and he added this.
They always train troopers with a seasoned leader. Before they send us on our own patrol car, they want us to work at least one fatality on the highway. Coming up on the scene like that is hard because you never know what to expect. It can take hours to sort through everything, get the accident cleared, and do everything you have to do. Then, after you've worked it, you have to drive to the family member's house and let them know.
He continued, and he shared something extremely surprising yet insightful here.
I still have flashbacks and carry the images in my mind from those wrecks. To me, though, letting someone I didn't even know, that someone else I didn't even know, died a horrific, unexpected death was the worst.
Now, after a brief pause, he shared this. Again, it was a surprising conclusion that was completely unexpected.
I'm not sure why it affected me like it did.
Now, from this conversation, we begin to see at least three common themes about emotional and spiritual pain. Now, these three apply to both PTSD and moral injury. Here's the first.
Number 1, invisible injuries rattle us, yet we all tend to undervalue them once we realize where the wounds originated.
You see, each of these men understood that there were issues in their lives which could have been perceived as bigger deals to other people, and rightly so. Each of these men also affirmed there were bigger things that caused issues for others. That is, you can always look around and see someone else who has it worse off than you. But, and this is important, you can't heal someone else's hurt. You must heal the hurt you have. The comparison game is not helpful. And when we compare and don't address something because there's something larger someone else has, it means our hurt often goes unhealed. The second thing is this.
Number 2, we all perceive trauma differently.
You see, the things which prove hard for me may seem easy for you. And the situations that may send you into emotional and spiritual upheaval might hardly register on my pain scale at all. Hurts and pains are unique to each person. Rather than undermining how we feel when something heartfelt occurs, whether we caused it or not, whether it's the result of our own actions or the result of something done to us, we should simply deal with it the best we can where we are. Here's the third and final observation.
Number 3, heroes are trained to deal with the external threats.
You sign up for the job because of the threats. You feel, let's just use the word that so many heroes have voiced to me as we put this project together. You feel called to serve humanity in this way. Again, use the term here because this is exactly how many heroes chose their profession. They felt called or compelled. This insatiable desire to serve. You sign up for that. What you don't sign up for and what you do not realize is coming is the tremendous pressure that's placed on your conscience. It is no one anticipates and rarely even has language for moral injury. Remember, whereas PTSD elicits the fight or flight response to external threats, moral injury is accompanied by a sense of guilt and shame. Now, for sure, moral injury results from our experiences, but we find ourselves internalizing the guilt and shame differently with moral injury than we do when it's PTSD. Remember, as well, you can have one without the other, or you can have both. Whatever the case, you must heal the hurt you have. E. Even though it makes sense, you cannot explain it away. Washington Booker III is one of the veterans featured in our documentary, Honoring the Code. Again, I'll put a link in the appendix of the book and down in the notes below where you can absolutely have free access to watch that film because we've referred to it several times throughout this resource. Booker was a U.S. Marine Corps sniper during the Vietnam War. When he was interviewed for the film, he said that boot camp actually altered his definition of what it meant to be human. At least, in his words, it changed it for a moment. I want to play it, his story, in his own words, and then I want to play a story just back to back, again, from the film, of him explaining what happened when he was in the line of duty after boot camp.
Killing is not a, I don't know, they turn it into something and make it acceptable to you. You know, they run you till you almost fall out, and then you're saying kill, kill, kill. When you come out on the other end and you've had people running next to you, you know, to get hit, and you running and you watch them out of the corner of your eye as they fall forward and they dead before they hit the ground. And these are people that you sat around in the foxhole with, that you sang with, and you know, it ain't. There's nothing glorious or all that other stuff. None of that stuff matters anymore. I killed an NVA lieutenant 5 o'clock in the morning when they hit us on 461. I made the mistake later, after we had pushed him back, we had broken off, of searching him. And I took his belt. And I took his SK, and I opened his wallet, and there he was, probably someplace in North Vietnam, him and his wife and his kid. It's the wrong thing to do, because he became a human, not a target. Not some evil force, you know, moving along a ridge line, a shadow. Yeah, but he became a human being.
Notice what occurred. Those few seconds on the battlefield transformed Booker. At boot camp, killing became acceptable and encouraged. It no longer felt that way. The pendulum of his conscience inside of him yanked and jerked back hard in the opposite direction. An invisible wave of regret crashed over him, submerging him amidst his thoughts as he stood on the battlefield. Booker revealed, that very second, the man I killed became a human.
Because he became a human.
Not a combatant. Do you remember his words? He was no longer some evil force moving along ridge lines or shadows. He became a person. His wife and kids were now somewhere crying. Needless to say, I never searched another body. Well, before we move to the next chapter, the final chapter of this resource, and talk about healing mortal injury, that's really what we want to do, is not just understand it. We want to heal it. We have to understand it in order to heal it, though. Let's affirm a few common threads that we see in all of the stories throughout this chapter as it pertains to moral injury. Here's the first common thread.
Moral injury, quote, makes sense.
We can look back at the experiences and affirm why the heroes feel like they do. Here's the second thread.
Moral injury can't be, quote, explained away.
In each of the encounters referenced throughout this chapter, we could tell the morally injured man or woman why they logically should not feel the way they do. There were extenuating circumstances. And most often there are when moral injury is concerned, but explaining it away doesn't make the hurt vanish. Here's the third and final thread.
Moral injury is not PTSD.
Post-traumatic stress is a response to external threats. Moral injury is a reaction to something stirring deep inside. In the following chapter, we'll outline the path forward.